Hello and welcome to another episode of the FemiNinja Project, and thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I have a fantastic and fascinating guest with me today. His name is Vin Infante, and he is a therapist, mentor, coach, speaker, licensed psychotherapist, and former FDNY firefighter who suffered with crippling anxiety, panic attacks, and deep suicidal depression. He was living in a dark state of victimhood until he finally saw the light, leading him to create mental shifts and identifying how to own more of his life and be his own leader. Vin has spent over 12 years learning therapies, skills, techniques, and tools to help people create lasting change. He now helps others take control of their lives, master their mindset, and develop their inner leader. Vin, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me in the FemiNinja community.
Yes, oh, we love everybody in the FemiNinja community, but we really love having men on the show because I love hearing their voice and their story. And I do want to say thank you for your service. Wow, being in the New York Fire Department must have been quite an experience.
Oh yeah. I like to tell people it was the best experience for me. And
Hmm.
it was actually one of the biggest things that I believe helped prepare me for entrepreneurship. I truly don't think I would have been as good as an entrepreneur if I didn't have that experience of going through the hardship of being in the fire academy. Because I was like, if I could do this, I should be able to
Right.
do anything.
Right. Yeah. That's a great way to put it. So now, why did you join the fire department in the first place, and why did you leave it? I'm always really curious when people have that need or that desire to serve others, because that is a really big sacrifice.
Well, when I was a kid, I had two dreams, and I always told people I would be a firefighter and I'd be a therapist. And people liked to mix the two, and they'd be like, "Oh, you're going to be a firefighter, a therapist for firefighters." And I said, "No, I'm going to be a firefighter and a therapist." And like, "Well, that's ambitious. How are you going to do both?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I'm like 5. Why are you asking me?" But it wound up becoming just I was capable of doing it. Set out with this goal. I was like, hey, I want to try it. I wound up failing, or not failing, but you have to get a really high score to become a
Mhm,
firefighter.
mhm.
And I did not get a high enough score the first time I took the exam. Like for reference, you need you need to get a trying to think, hold on a second. You needed to get like 101 or higher to really get into the fire department and to really be a firefighter because it's
Wow.
so competitive. They have about
Mm,
80,000 people per year that is taking this exam. And so with that being said, if you're not one of those people that are actually high enough on this list to be able to get called, you're
mhm,
never going to become a firefighter. And that happened to me the first time.
mhm,
And so I set out with this goal of I really want to do this. I really want to be a firefighter. And I kept trying until eventually I did get called. And
mhm.
now when I got called, it was already way far through my therapy career and I was already doing it. And it just kind of all fell in at the same time and worked out.
Wow.
After not getting it the first time, which I found out later was a blessing because if I did, I would have dropped out of my master's program.
Oh.
So because I didn't become a firefighter the first time and I didn't have to drop out of my master's program, what wound up happening was I was now able to actually finish, have all this amazing experience as a therapist.
Mhm.
Then, when the time was right and I was supposed to be, I did become a firefighter. And yeah, it's led to a lot of amazing experiences in my life.
I would think that having that therapy background really came in handy as a firefighter for many reasons, both with the people that you're dealing with and that you're helping, and just with the incredible amount of stress that you're under when you are dealing with that type of work.
It's definitely interesting. As a firefighter, you there's so many different ways to show up, right? And I think
Hmm.
that a lot of people maybe don't understand that. There's not just one way.
Mhm.
When you show up as a firefighter, it's showing up for everything that's going to be out there. And you don't, funny enough, you don't know what's going to be out there.
Mhm.
You don't really have an understanding yet because you haven't gone through it and you can't know because you haven't done it. And
Mhm.
so the way I've come to understand it is that when you are in a situation, it's it's whatever the situation is going to be. You
Mhm.
can't plan for it, and that's sometimes where the training of being a therapist or being a coach definitely came in handy because
Mhm.
one thing that you would encounter, and you might even be surprised to know this, but as a firefighter, you encounter a lot of angry people. You know, everybody always thinks, hey, it's a firefighter, like you're happy to see them. Yeah, maybe you when it's not a bad day, but
Mhm.
when it's a bad day, and somebody's coming into your home because it's one of the worst days of your life, you don't
Mhm.
care who it is. You're not like, oh my God, it's a firefighter. I love them on a normal basis. Let me be happy that they're here now. And so I think one of the things that always helped me when I was seeing these people that were going through all sorts of emotions was just remembering and keeping in my head of like, they're not calling us because they're having a good day. They're calling us because it's the worst day of their life. And
Mhm.
well, they need me to not be judging them right now or
Mhm.
be frustrated with them or whatever it is that they need. So that
Mhm.
was one of the biggest ways I think that having this therapeutic component was helpful for me.
So I'm really curious how you were able to, were you working in both fields at the same time, or did you put the therapy on the back burner or put it on hold for a while so you could have your firefighter career? Because I would think trying to balance two careers at the same time that are that intense would be really hard to do.
Yeah, so I at the time I actually had launched my coaching business.
Hmm.
And so in doing that, I was essentially I was trying to do it. Now, as a firefighter, especially during COVID, we were working 24 hours and then we were off 2 days. And
Hmm.
so being off 2 days was helpful because it allowed it for me specifically
Hmm.
to have the time to build my business.
Hmm.
So I was always trying to build my business even while I was doing the academy, which was
Hmm.
crazier because the academy is you know, it's every freaking day of the week for like 13-hour days. So
Hmm.
it's a good time. But with that being said, yes, I was always building my business in the backside. And
Hmm.
I don't know, I was doing it pretty well, in my opinion.
Hmm. Well, I would imagine during that time, because it was COVID and, just such a crazy time in history, that a lot of people needed your services both on both ends, both
Mm.
for the therapy and the coaching, as well as in the field as a firefighter.
Oh, of course. Well, that's what honestly was so helpful for doing the coaching is the fact that I was, well, I mean, obviously you're dealing with different people, right? As a
Hmm.
firefighter and a coach, but I was essentially able to see both sides of the world, right? Because
Mm.
as a firefighter, you're more in it, you know, you're more hands-on with certain things. And then
Hmm.
as a therapist or a coach, you're kind of sitting there and you're having these conversations about how people's everyday lives are going as opposed to just seeing them on the worst days of their lives.
Hmm.
So it was a very, you know, nobody's ever really asked me about that, but this is a very interesting thought is
Hmm.
that I would have to go in and physically be in the space with people because, you know, obviously, even though it was COVID, there was a lot going on.
Hmm.
However, as somebody who is just sitting there trying to be present with people too was also interesting because you're seeing everybody's normal day-to-day lives unfold. So I thought that was pretty cool too.
Hmm. I don't mean for this to be a facetious question. I really don't. But
Go
did
for
you did you have like a pile of business cards in your pocket? Because I would
it.
imagine that you came across a lot of people who would need your services as a therapist and coach.
Of course. But no, I believe it or not, we did not have business cards trying to hand them out to people who just lost their stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So now, what made you decide it was time to leave the or the fire department? And at what point in your history did the anxiety and the panic attacks and the depression set in?
So those things were things that existed a while back These
Mhm.
were things that were part of my history as somebody who had suffered with those at a younger age.
Okay.
They weren't exactly present in my current state of being.
Mhm.
So I didn't really have too much to worry about, at least in my, my current state.
Mhm.
Now, I mean, we'll go more into that if you'd like. I'm sure it'd be a
Mhm.
good time. And with that being said, deciding to leave the fire department was not easy. It
Mm.
was a very difficult decision because, when you get or achieve your childhood dream
Mhm.
and you get to this space of, hey, this is what I thought I always wanted. And then you
Mhm.
realize, there's something that's really pulling me. And for me, that was coaching. And I wound up realizing when I wanted to leave was there was this one night, I think it was I want to say it was a Friday or a Saturday. It was a Friday. Sorry, it was a Friday evening. And I was getting texts from the guys at the firehouse because one of the guys was out and he didn't want to go into work the next day. He's like, hey man, I'm not feeling good, or whatever the case is.
Mhm.
And of course, as the new guy, because I'm not gonna sit here and pretend I was a firefighter for a long, long time. For anyone listening, I was a firefighter for a year. And with that being said, I was still the new guy. And so I was expected to come in whenever anybody couldn't make it, didn't want to make it, whatever the case was. However, I'll never forget, and this was the day I decided I had to resign,
Mm.
was I was getting these text messages, but I had like 4 clients scheduled on Saturday. And I remember just thinking to myself, I was like, there's no way I'm canceling on my client. Like
Mhm.
I'm not gonna do that. And so when that realization came up, well, what do you do with that realization? And what I did with it was I said, because I know I'm not going to cancel on my client because I don't want to, what
Mhm.
that tells me is that I am prioritizing my clients,
Mhm.
that I would rather see them than go into work and be a firefighter.
Mhm.
And when I came to that realization, that was the moment of like, I'm not really doing anybody a service and I need to resign because I need to do what's right. And I think a
Mhm.
lot of people don't get to that. A lot of
Mhm.
people may not say, "Oh, I need to do what's right here." A lot of people might just be like, "Well, it's okay if I have one foot in, one foot out." For me, it wasn't. For
Yeah.
me, it was not. For me, I had to really sit with myself and be honest. I was like, you know what? Maybe I don't want to actually do this because if I did, why would I be one foot in, one foot out for both?
Mhm.
Because if you think about it, if I canceled on my clients, I'm doing them a disservice. They're not getting the
Mhm.
best of me. If I don't show
Mhm.
up for the firefighters, I'm doing them a disservice. They're not getting the best of me either. And
Mhm.
so you really look at it and you say, wow, am I doing right by anybody? And the answer was 100% no. And
Mhm.
that's what drove me to say, you know what? I probably should resign because it's not right what I'm doing, in my opinion.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, your clients come first.
Well,
Absolutely.
they did, but they're not supposed to.
Well, that's true, but I mean, you have to make that decision
Of course.
of, where are you going to put your priorities? And you can't be split 2 ways. You can't be
No,
divided. It just doesn't work out that way.
100%. And knowing that, that's the reason I was like, all right, I'm not doing right. Like I have to just be okay with not doing this, right?
Mhm.
So
So now,
that's what it came down to.
at what point did you, because I know that you've worked in a variety of different settings. I mean, you have done it all, inpatient, outpatient, homeless shelters. You have worked in a wide, vast, different venues and different situations in your career. Were you, was that part of learning your skills to become a psychotherapist and a coach? Or how did that happen and where did that happen along your journey?
Yeah, so I would say for me, working in all these settings was kind of the thing that I'm supposed to do.
Mhm.
Um, my dad actually was a big inspiration in all of this because my dad is a psychotherapist.
Mhm.
And
Okay.
that was part of the reason that I always said, like, I want to be a psychotherapist when I grow up because my dad had inspired me. And he
Mhm.
said, any therapist that's a good therapist, that's worth his degree, etc., he will put himself in the hardest situations that he can in life. And so I thought to myself, well, what are the hardest things that I could do? In fact, who are the most difficult people I could work with? And that's why I worked in these settings. That's why I worked in inpatient, outpatient, homeless shelters and clinics and all these things, because at the end of the day, if and this will be funny for any of you listeners out there that have maybe been to a therapist before, and you like to come into the office and you like to think that your therapist is going to be like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I should tell them this. I would get that all the time. And maybe
Mhm.
some of your listeners are guilty of doing this. You walk in, you have a therapist, you have a coach, whoever you have, and you go, I don't want to, I don't know if I should tell you. It might freak you out. And I've heard that so many times, and I'll just turn around and I'll say, um, sure. Yeah, maybe, but let's go ahead. Why don't you just tell me? Because at the end of the day, I could also turn around and say, you realize I've talked to people that have told me how they killed someone, right? And I could say that, and that might freak
Mhm.
them out, but that's the reality. So, and then the person's big secret is usually like, I just I get this crazy social anxiety where like I like to hide in the corner of the room. Like, isn't that so weird? And I'm like, sure. Yeah, you're a tough nut for me to crack. Like, let me tell you. And it's funny because everybody always comes in and they think that their thing is the hard thing. It's like,
Mhm.
I don't know, like you probably never dealt with somebody who's got anxiety like me or depression like me. And I'm like, yeah, you're right. Like, you're a unique one. And so it's very interesting. People build up their problems in a very interesting way. But that was part of the reason that my dad always told me, like, work in the difficult settings. Because if you could work with a
Mhm.
schizophrenic in an inpatient unit, you could probably help a normal everyday person with anxiety. And he's right.
That makes a whole lot of sense. Go for the biggest challenges first, and then the smaller ones aren't nearly as tough to crack.
Of course.
Mhm. So then when all right, going from there, I'm trying. I just lost my train of thought a little bit, but
Got derailed.
well, I went to a faraway place in my brain wondering, did anybody ever tell me that they killed somebody? I mean, I don't think I ever, had that experience. And how would I react if someone did tell me that?
That was my first ever real therapy client, actually.
Really?
Yeah. Oh, there's a story for that too, if you'd like to hear it.
I would love to hear it.
Sure. So I always had a rule that I would never work with somebody who's killed somebody because in my mind, it was that they don't deserve
Oh.
to be heard.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so I didn't want to ever have a client like that. And I was like, if they've killed someone, they should probably be in jail. They deserve it. They shouldn't have any chance at freedom or anything else. And so going in as a now this was in my master's program,
Mhm.
and I go into the inpatient, and my mentor at the clinic or the unit, I should say, he goes, well, is there any clients or people you don't want to work with? I was like,
Mhm.
no, man. I was like, I'll work with everybody. I was like, I have no issues with that. Oh, except somebody who's killed somebody. I won't work with them. I don't believe that they deserve any type of support. And he's like, okay. Anyway, man, he's like, it's great meeting you. Coming on Monday because it was a Friday. And he's like, coming on Monday. And then, from there, I'll start giving you some clients for your caseload. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. I was like, okay, cool. So I go in on Monday, my first client. He's like, here's your new client. I'm like, okay, why is he in here? He's like, oh, he killed someone. I'm like, really? He's like, yes. I was like, didn't I tell you that's the person I don't want to work with? He's like, yes, that's why you will work with them because you need to learn something. I was like, okay, fine. Anyway, if we fast forward, because obviously I can't really share anything about this, but
Right.
if we fast forward, I've learned a lot. I actually have a lot of empathy for this gentleman,
Mhm.
and it's a really interesting concept of how the brain works when it's not a normal brain. And more importantly, how the brain could be affected when it's not a normal brain and you add substances. And
Mm.
so the biggest thing, and this I could probably say because I don't think this will matter, but because now this is like just known research, right? The biggest thing, for instance, I'm a normal function, maybe I don't know. I don't want to go there. I might be a normal functioning person with a normal functioning brain. We'll see. But you consider the average person. If they do something stupid like go and smoke weed, maybe they get a little hungry, maybe they get tired, maybe they get giggly. If you have a schizophrenic, somebody who's got severe type of brain chemical imbalances that have a severe type of mental disorder and they go smoke weed, they might start hearing voices. They
Mhm.
might start hallucinating. They might start having nightmarish like voices beaming into
Mhm.
their mind.
Mhm.
And it's really tough and scary. And they don't even know. And the more
Mhm.
interesting part is that that's something you wouldn't expect because something as harmless as weed.
Mhm.
And so now all of a sudden it could elevate depending on what your brain is like. So that was a real eye opener. And through spending a lot of time with this guy, actually a year appropriately, I feel as though I've developed a really interesting relationship with him. We test
Mhm.
together. He used to teach me. We'd have doctors watch us. He was really intelligent, phenomenal person in that way. Because right, a lot of people probably listening right now, they're like, did he just say he's a phenomenal person? It's like, yes, he actually was a very interesting person to be around, and I really did enjoy my time with him and learning about him, and it opened up my world and it opened up my eyes to
Mhm.
certain things that are out there, and to the way that things maybe could be left a little bit more open for interpretation. It doesn't mean that people
Mhm.
get passes on specific things they do, but
Mhm.
it does really give you curiosity, or you could
Mhm.
develop curiosity to understand why or how people do what they do.
Mhm. That's interesting. In my previous life, I was a respiratory therapist. I did that for almost 20 years, and I worked in like a long-term care center, and all the most of the patients were on ventilators. And I had one guy that was a gang member. And, it was like, oh, I never worked with a gang member before. And I got this in report, and I'm thinking, man, maybe I can get somebody to trade with me. And, I was a little nervous about it. He was, he, uh, he was a quadriplegic. Ran his car into a tree. So, I mean, there was really nothing to worry about. But, when I went in there, he and I ended up getting along. We had a great rapport, and he was intelligent. He was really funny. He had a great sense of humor, and we had it was a really great experience for me working with this guy.
He sensed your fiery energy. He saw all the swords and he was like, that she should have been a gang member.
Right? Well, I wasn't a ninja yet at the time, but I think I always did have the warrior spirit, and I'm pretty sure he saw that.
He sensed it. This is my people right here.
Yeah, right. Maybe we should recruit her. No.
I love
Okay,
it.
so now, so did you ever work in a prison?
No, never worked in a prison.
Okay.
I have a friend that did, but I didn't.
Okay. All righty. And then when you do work with people now, I mean, I think I saw on your website you have like 5 tiers that you address when you're working with somebody.
Yeah, I like to teach people the 5 aspects of mastery. So the five
Mm-hmm.
aspects of mastery are what I have found to be the guide to living a life where you are in control.
Mm-hmm.
Because life can always feel out of control, or it could be 100% within your control, depending on how you view life. So, do you and your listeners think you would like to hear the 5 aspects of mastery?
Yes, please.
Excellent. Let's throw them at you. Listeners, please get a pen, paper, take a voice note, whatever you could do. Record this. You're going to need it for later. Because I'll tell you how to use it too. We're not just going to leave you with some tools and no training. So get ready.
Mm.
So the 5 aspects of mastery are these. We have your thoughts, your emotions, your language, your behaviors, and your actions. These are the only 5 things in this world that you can control. If you think
Mm.
about it, there's actually nothing else that you can have mastery over. Now, what you can have is a sense of control over things, and we call that influence because you can't actually control anything that's outside of yourself. You have the opportunity to influence it with a higher level of what? Mastery,
Mm-hmm.
knowledge, confidence, connection, communication. But these all still the self and they will go outwards. And even if you try to influence your world, it may or may not work, right? Like Cheryl, I may like you. So I may say, yes, I'd love to be on your podcast. However, you may not get me doing anything else. You may not get me shooting out messages on behalf of your podcast, or you may not have me post on Instagram. And you could ask me to do it, and I might just forget, or I might be too busy, or whatever. And so you have an opportunity to influence me to help you promote this and do all this great
Mhm.
stuff. But at the end of the day, if I choose not to do it, you can't do anything about that. But what you can do is you could choose how you're going to respond and react to every situation that comes your way, because that is ultimately what self mastery comes down to, including those five aspects. So if you think about how do we utilize these things, your thoughts, well, I mean, it's pretty self explanatory. It's what's the
Mhm.
thing that's constantly circling around in your head? What are you shifting your focus to? So I want all you guys out there to write down thought equal focus if you have a pen and paper. If you don't worry about it. Just remember this or play it back. Thoughts equal focus. Now, what's very interesting about that is people think that focus is narrowing down, right? How many times do
Mhm.
you hear people say, like, you got to focus, you got to get clear and narrow down?
Mhm.
But the interesting thing about focus that I've learned is that focus is actually expansion.
Mhm.
What you focus on gets bigger, it becomes all consuming. And so, why your thoughts are so important is because your thoughts are actually a big tell of what your focus is. And if you start shifting what you're thinking about, your focus shifts with it. So understanding your thoughts is important. Your language, well, I could tell a lot, and this is kind of where therapy and mentoring and coaching and all that stuff is great. I could tell a lot about your life if I just listen to you talk. Like
Mhm.
I don't even have to interact with you. I could just tell me, start narrating your life, listen to the language you use, and then I could tell you if you're living in an empowered state, a disempowered state. Are you a victim? Are you somebody who's strong? Are you somebody who views problems, challenges, opportunities? Like just by listening to the language you use, that's the biggest representation of what your subconscious believes. So, for all you listeners, be extremely careful about your language. Number
Mhm.
three is your emotion. Motion is just energy in motion, it moves through your body. We have physiological forms that take place of emotions. Like Cheryl, you and I, can we go to Russia right now? And then if I asked you to point out somebody that looks depressed to me, do you think you might be able to do that?
I think I might. As a
I'd
matter of
say
fact, I'm pretty
you
sure I
probably could.
could.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And the reason being that probably even your listeners could. I could bring one of them, and I can also ask them to play the game with us. We all know that emotions have a look.
Mhm.
So challenging people to be aware enough of their emotions to not only know what they're feeling, but know how their body's displaying it.
Mhm.
Because if you can be aware enough of your emotions, you can actually start utilizing physiological shifts to transfer and change the energy and motion, thus
Mhm.
gaining more mastery over your emotion. Now, there's other things for that too, but I think the physiological one is mostly downplayed. That's why I put so much emphasis on it.
Mhm.
And the last two things I want to leave you people with are actions and behaviors. So they sound similar, but they're very different. Why? Well, your behaviors are actually pretty much dependent on your attitude. Your attitude determines your behaviors because your behaviors are tied in very deeply to your identity. Who you believe yourself to be tells me a lot about your attitude, which tells me a lot about what your behaviors are day in and day out. Actions are not so tied to identity, they're actually more tied to perceptions of value. We
Mhm.
don't always do the things that are tied to our identity. We do the things we see as most valuable. Now, Cheryl, I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I've seen people who they present an identity one way, and then maybe a news story or something comes out, and you're like, holy crap, what a shock. How
Mhm.
did they do that? Well, I'll tell you how, because they are not acting aligned to their behavior, to their identity. They're taking an opportunity, they're taking a moment to moment value based decision making skill, and they're taking an action on that. Because that's
Mhm.
ultimately what an action is. If we really want to make a great example, let's say we take a church pastor. This was actually a story that happened a while back, and a lot of people were shocked by it. The church pastor of a mega church cheated on his wife.
Mhm.
You think, how could he do that? His identity is he's a pastor, he's a man of God, he follows scripture, he's faithful, he cheated on his wife. Now, I don't know what went on in his marriage, I don't know what went on in his life, but I could guarantee you in the moment he cheated, he believed that that was more valuable than his bonds to his wife, his identity,
Mhm.
and his vow to God. And so, if we are not cognizant of what we value, what we need in this life, if we don't have that awareness, it can be very hard to take powerful actions in the right direction.
Mhm.
So, I will sum it all up for you and then I will give the mic to Cheryl because I know I'm hogging it. The five aspects for all you listeners: thoughts, actions, behaviors, language, and emotions. If you master those five, you can control your entire internal world and you can hopefully more powerfully influence your external world.
Mhm. Excellent. Thank you so much for that. There's one word that really um, just struck me that I really
Yes.
kind of, and that one is when you mentioned physiology. Because when you're talking about things like, behaviors, mindset, awareness, language, attitude, all of that really impacts your physiology. So if
Hmm.
you could talk a little bit more about how, maybe our negative behaviors, thoughts, emotions can impact our physical health as opposed to changing the narrative and going to a more positive kind of mindset and attitude and behavior.
Sure. Well, it's funny because a lot of this is actually more practically shown through neurology, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your brain has these, and you guys are all going to love my technical terms. Your brain has these squiggles in them. And these here squiggles are your deep-rooted patterns and behaviors. They are the
Mm-hmm.
things that you have done so much that your brain was like, hey, I'm going to do this so often. I never want to forget it. Let me put a nice deep groove in my brain so
Mm-hmm.
that I never forget this for this person. And so what winds up happening is now there's also other things that are recruited into that groove. So you may have heard the saying before, and if you haven't, this is an important one to remember, is that neurons that fire together wire together. What that means is that anything you're doing or more things that you're doing create more neurons firing more together, which means the
Mm-hmm.
bonds are a lot bigger, right?
Mm-hmm.
Imagine if you had 20 neurons firing together, now you have 20 strands wiring. Whereas if you only had two, you got two strands wire. Which one's easier to break? Very simple math. 2 versus 20.
Mm-hmm.
Two. Good job, everybody. So, what that means is if you want to start breaking patterns, if you want to start breaking, especially emotional patterns, because they're all every pattern forms the same. Now, if we're talking emotional patterns, the thing with those is that they're usually not extremely logical. However, they have served us in some way, and that's how the body preserves why it's a useful pattern.
Mm-hmm.
Because you might still be reacting as if you were a 12-year-old and now you're 42. Now, I can guarantee that you as a 42-year-old probably shouldn't react in any way that you did as a 12-year-old. But at 12 years old, there was value in that.
Mm-hmm.
As you continue to get older, you still saw value in that. Now at 42, you're still doing the same thing because you've seen value in it,
Mm-hmm.
though you may no longer receive value from it. And that's where we see people with these negative habits, negative patterns that are doing things, giving them terrible results. They don't know why they can't stop it. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of it is actually because of the fact that it is deeply embedded in your neurology slash physiology. So now, this is one of the examples I always love to use with people. If you're somebody who gets angry, we could break, and this is what we have to do. It's called a pattern interrupt.
Mm-hmm.
Pattern interrupt is being able to shift the things that are currently going on, which is causing that pattern to circulate, right?
Mm-hmm.
So one thing that I find could be very funny, for instance, if you're somebody who gets angry, try to yell bubbles. Yeah, just yell bubbles. Like, think about seriously, like you're pissed off and you just scream bubbles, or you say bubbles in a serious way. You're more likely going to laugh than not. And what we
Mm-hmm.
just did was we just did a pattern interruption. Now,
Mm-hmm.
as we said before, neurons that fire together wire together. The more things you could do to create a pattern interrupt, the stronger the pattern interrupt. So, like that out of five might be a level one pattern interrupt because it's one piece of your entire mastery, right? One
Mm-hmm.
one aspect. Now, if you want to get a level five, next time you're angry, hop on one leg, flap your arms like a bird, screech, and make those ridiculous noises as your arms go up and down. I guarantee you won't be able to be mad after that. In fact, I guarantee you probably will laugh so much that you won't even be able to remember why you in the first place. And so it sounds stupid. It definitely looks stupid. But I guarantee anybody who's listening, you go do this in the privacy of your home because I know you probably don't want to be seen doing it. And you're
Mm-hmm.
mad, this will work. Like
Mm-hmm.
the reason though is not just because of how ridiculous it is, but also because of the fact that I'm going to give you guys a visual. This is my favorite visual. This has helped me a lot in my life. Imagine that there's a little man or a woman running around in your brain, and they have a file cabinet. And in this file cabinet is every reaction and every response and every pattern. And so anytime something goes on in you, this little person runs over to the file cabinet and they look for the file. They're like, okay, I got to find the script to run because I know this. Okay. Pattern. Oh, Vin's angry. Okay. I know what happens when it's angry. According to this paper, it says Vin's going to yell. He's going to get his whole body tense. He's going to think everybody's a jerk, and he's going to stomp around like the whole script. And then he runs it, and he just runs the program. So you're out of control at that point. And why you're out of control is because you've gone into an automatic process.
Mhm.
Unless you're hyper aware and you're really working on it, that automatic process is most likely going to take over and your script for anger kicks on. Now imagine this, you're pissed off, the little person's running over to this cabinet, they're about to look for the file of anger, and you start acting ridiculous. You're hopping up and down on one leg with a bird, like a bird screeching, making cawing noises, whatever it is. And this guy's in the cabinet. He's like, I, I gotta be honest, I don't know what the hell I'm looking for right now.
Mhm.
Because the emotion that seems like it came up is anger, but when Vin's angry, he does this stuff. He doesn't do this. So I don't.
Mhm.
Okay, so you know what? I can't run a script because I don't know what's going on. So now I actually have to learn. So what I have to do is I need to wait and I need to see what data I gather from Vin because now Vin is going to tell me what this pattern means or what this emotion means.
Mhm.
And so you are effectively doing a strong and powerful pattern interrupt, and you're giving your brain the opportunity to learn something new so that you can create a new pattern, a new response, and start rewiring your brain in a very simple process. It's a very simple process, but I guarantee a lot of the people, all of you listeners, I'm calling you out. Some of you will not be hopping on one leg, screeching like a bird after this, and I know it, and phooey to you.
Well, I think the important thing to remember here too is that your brain is always listening and it's
Always.
always recording information, and you can change the patterns that you've had established and have been a default to for years and years and years can be changed. The one thing too is you were talking about bubbles and hopping around on one foot, waving your arms and clucking like a chicken or a bird or whatever. All I could think of was, if I'm having a bad day, which happens not that much, but it happens
Sure.
sometimes. I'm in a bad mood, kind of cranky. If I hear the sound of a baby or a toddler laughing, I just lose it. I mean, it changes my entire outlook. You cannot be pissed off. You cannot, not laugh with it. It's just the one thing I think everybody should have a recording of the sound
Mhm.
of a baby or a toddler or even a group of them laughing and carrying on.
Yeah. Well, and this is the thing, right? That works because you have such fond memories of baby laughter. Some point in your
Mhm.
life, you really enjoyed being around baby laughter. And now every time that comes up, it brings back that emotion because we store emotions. That's why emotions, energy, emotion, it gets stored in the body. Like
Mhm.
me, I have this song that literally, no matter what mood I'm in, if I put this song on, I'm smiling ear to ear and to the point that I'm almost laughing because I'm just so happy. And I'll tell you why. It was a moment where I really loved being a father. For those of you listening, we probably didn't cover it, but it's actually
Mhm.
the more important role in my life is that I'm a father of this
Mhm.
great 2-year-old girl. Her name is Sage, and I love her with not just all of my heart, fiber in my soul. And there was a few moments in my life, couple months back, especially where business was a little bit rough. And
Mhm.
I got hit with this giant tax bill, and life was like, oh man, I don't know what's going on right now. I got to figure this out. And I remember I was feeling like I was so broke. And then I was feeling like I was such a failure as a father because so I have a stay-at-home girl, a stay-at-home wife, and I have my daughter, and I'm the main provider and the breadwinner. And
Mhm.
I really value that. I really value being able to give that life and that opportunity to my family. And so it's a lot easier to beat yourself up when you are not just taking care of yourself, but really
Mhm.
providing life for others. And I remember like my girl was out, she was with her friends, and she asked me to watch our daughter. And I was like, sure. Like I love spending time with my daughter. I really do. It's like the greatest freaking thing. And so I made it a great night. We went out, we went shopping, and she's only 2. So really, I went shopping. I dragged her with me. And then, and then I really, a guilty pleasure of mine is I really love all you can eat buffets because I like the variety. And I was bringing my daughter out. I went and found this all you can eat buffet. I never tried it before, and it was kind of crappy. And it really was. It was so bad, but it should have figured it was pretty cheap. And so I'm in this restaurant with her, and we're eating, we're just hanging out, And then, she went to the bathroom, so I had to change her. So I take her to the bathroom and we're on the changing table and this great song comes on. And I don't know, but it was just a really good song. It had a great beat. It was a Spanish song. And so now I used to love listening to Spanish music all the time. And I'm like kind of sort of dancing while I'm changing her in the
Mhm.
bathroom. So she's on the table, like laying down, staring at me, and I'm dancing. And she's copying me. And
Oh.
so we got this great song just blasting in the background. And then I see her and she's kind of just like doing her thing with her arms up and down, smiling at me, wiggling on the changing table, and I'm dancing. And no matter how little money I had right now, right then in that moment, no matter how crappy I felt or how incapable as a father, a leader, a man I felt, in that moment, nothing mattered. And
Hmm.
I was at like the peak state of happiness watching my wiggly little daughter dancing in the bathroom of this crappy China buffet. And now I love this freaking song. And if I play this song, it is the greatest moment for me, no matter what I'm doing any day of the week. And it's the power that we have if you could tie an emotion into anything, to your point of
Hmm.
baby laughter, or to my point of this song. And everybody can find something. I
Hmm.
would love to encourage your listeners to really find something that sparks that or create it. I
Hmm.
didn't seek that. I didn't intentionally make that, but you could.
Hmm. Then I just had this mental image, this picture of you playing that song at her wedding for the father bride wedding dance.
I thought about it, don't you?
Really? Oh my gosh, I'm thinking like you.
I've thought about it. I don't know if it'll be as significant to her, but it's definitely significant to me.
Oh, I think it would be just absolutely incredible. I think it'd be precious.
Well, we'll see. I don't think either of us really know how to dance to that song yet, but we could learn.
Oh, I'm sure. And, hey, where you live, you can find a fantastic dance teacher. I have all the confidence in the world that somebody would be able to teach you and get those same moves in there somehow.
There we go. Do the 2-year-old wiggle.
Hilarious. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to ask you about, because we already did talk about the brain quite a bit and changing patterns and pathways, and
Mhm.
so thank you for that. I really appreciate it. Now you do have it's a free download, I believe. It's the step-by-step guide to creating a vision board. So I want you
Yeah.
to explain that. Tell us a little bit more about that, and how people can get it and what they can learn from it.
Yeah, I got a few free things for your listeners. So one
Awesome.
is the board. I
Mhm.
like to call it a mission board because I think vision board has uh every time I hear somebody say vision board, and I just think of like this blonde white girl who's got live, laugh, love on it, and she doesn't have a job and she lives in Bali and she's telling people to manifest their best life. And I'm just
Yeah.
like, that's not a board. But
Thank you
that
for
is the
saying
standard
that
one.
because I just, vision boards, I know I've been in networking groups and everybody wants to do the vision board and I get invited every single January. I mean, my inbox is just flooded with people who want me to come and do a vision board with them. And to me, it just sounds a little silly, but mission board sounds like it's a lot more purposeful and
Yes,
has more
that's the
direction.
purpose.
Yeah,
A
it's an
100%.
action.
Exactly. So I've always liked the idea of vision boards, but none of them really
Hmm.
felt right to me. I
Hmm.
feel like people make them and they're just collages and useless wall decorations that we
Hmm.
forget about. And then in, a few weeks or months, you walk by and you're like, oh, I remember making that.
Hmm.
Useless. You don't need more crap cluttering up your walls, people. Let's be honest. So I came up with a mission board. And you're right. The point of the mission board is this: a vision is nice to
Hmm.
have, but a mission is something you can get behind. And we
Hmm.
want you to actually get behind something. We want you to stand for something. We want you to be intentional. We want you to consciously create your life and stop passively experiencing it. So I created the mission board. And naturally, it is better than your vision board for these two reasons. One, as I just said, it's because I made it. No. But number two, the real reason is because it is exactly as Cheryl pointed out. It is meant to be a very intentional
Mhm.
tool to aid you on your day-to-day process. I could sit here and give you the long version, but I don't want to bore everybody. So if you really love it, you can go check it out. It's on my website. It's under the resources tab. My website is vincentinfante.life, and
Mhm.
it is on the resources tab. And all you got to do is put in your info and you get it for free sent to your email. If you don't get it for any reason, email me. I will personally send it to you. But essentially, what this does is it challenges you to not just put up a few pictures. And some vision boards have like 40, 50 pictures. This is being close and intentional. We want
All
six
right.
to eight pictures, really good pictures of the things that you're working for. Next is the present tense affirmation that you will put on it. We're not talking about, oh, this hasn't happened yet. Like, I'll achieve this one day. It's already happened. In your
Mhm.
mind, it's happened. You've created it. Now you're welcoming it into the present. So that's another part. The biggest and best component of this board, though, are these next two pieces, in my opinion. I love them the most. Is one is I challenge people to put quotes on their mission board. Quotes are timeless pieces of wisdom that you could study and then you could
Mhm.
live your life by. I
Mhm.
have I have oh, let me look at my board. I have six quotes up there.
Mhm.
And I learn the quotes and then I'll take them down, I'll replace them, and I'll start memorizing some new quotes because
Mhm.
these are things that can challenge you to really change your life if you actually value the quote, right? One of the
Mhm.
biggest quotes that have changed my life is one by Marcus Aurelius. And he said, be tolerant of others and strict with yourself.
Ooh.
And I love that. And that helped me because as a high performing individual, I have very high expectations and high standards. The
Mhm.
problem with expectations is that they're inherently selfish. The problem with standards is that it's your job to meet your standards,
Mhm.
not everybody else's. And
Mhm.
so when you blur the two and you start putting expectations on others and demanding that people help you not only get your standard, but you also want them to conform to your standard, you start creating rifts and barriers. I had to learn, and the only thing that broke through to me was actually that quote that I had to learn that I was being selfish and I was being uh, somewhat egotistical
Mhm.
because I was trying to force other people to live up to my expectations and standards. But that quote really helped me see myself through that.
Mhm.
So that was a big thing that changed my life. That's why I challenge people to look up quotes. And then the last and most important piece is your mission, vision, and value statements. It is very hard to know who you are, what you're doing, and where you're going in this world if you don't know who you are, what you're doing, and where you're going in this world. And so, mission, vision, and value statements, if anyone out there listening is a business owner or an entrepreneur, you might have them for your business. But
Mhm.
the question that I have for you is, do you have them for yourself? Because I
Mhm.
have two. I have one for
Mhm.
my mission, for my business, and one for myself, and they stand right next to each other, right
Mhm.
on my mission board. And these are the biggest challenges for you is that you
Mhm.
need to understand why you're here. And don't get me wrong, the reason we all have a personal one, if you're an entrepreneur, I encourage you to do both.
Mhm.
But if you are just anybody, you should always have a personal one. Because who
Mhm.
are you as a person? What are your values in this life? What do you feel aligned to? Why are you here? Maybe it's to be an amazing mother. Maybe it's to
Mhm.
be a kick-ass entrepreneur. Maybe it's to be
Mhm.
something in between, somebody that really loves their job and loves being at home with their family. I don't
Mhm.
care. It doesn't matter to me. You have to determine what that is for you.
Mhm.
So this board should also be paired with a few other things, daily practices. Like
Mhm.
if you say you want to have a great body, utilize that part of the board to
Mhm.
start planning out how are you going to go work out, when are you going to go work out, what does the diet look like, the water intake,
Mhm.
the sleep schedule, etc. If you want to be an amazing father, like that's one of my goals,
Mhm.
put up a photo of what you think your child might look like in the future
Mhm.
and write how people know them in the future because
Mhm.
that is going to challenge you to parent a specific way so that you raise them a specific way.
Mhm.
So there's so many details, there's so many intricate ways that you could do this. And then most importantly, utilize it with a journal or a daily
Mhm.
test schedule.
Mhm.
Whatever you want to do, just make sure that you take this board, you look at it, you see it every single day like I do. It's right there.
Mhm.
For anyone who can't see me, it's like literally next to me.
Mhm.
And assess, does this stuff make sense to you? And if it does, what are you prepared to do every single day to start working on at least one or multiple of these things every single day? And give yourself an opportunity to really utilize this as your guide for your life.
Mhm.
And here's the last part that I will say is people get stuck. Don't be afraid to change things on there often.
Mhm.
You might put something up on your board like a house and then realize, I don't really give a crap about that house anymore. That's the style I liked a year
Mhm.
ago, but I don't like it anymore. Pull
Mhm.
it down, reassess. Your mission board should change just as much as you do. And if
Mhm.
that board isn't changing, you're probably not changing. And if you're not changing, you need to ask,
Mhm.
are you doing the proper inner work? Because both of those things I do believe should have some switches even throughout the year.
Mhm.
Even if it's just you've taken down the quotes because you've learned them and you're putting up new ones, that's still a win. But make sure to constantly assess not only the board, but yourself and make sure you're living in alignment and doing things in alignment.
I'm really curious, just the fact that you have, the boards there and they're in front of you and you're looking at them every day. Um, And you're, of course, taking action, but even just
Yes.
the fact that the boards are there and that you're seeing them every day and that you're registering what is on the boards, is that already changing the pathways in your brain, the neural pathways?
It's interesting. Exposure does change the neural pathways.
Mhm,
So your subconscious mind can't tell the difference between a vision and reality. That's why
mhm,
visualization techniques are so powerful.
mhm,
When you see this every day, like here's a great example, for instance. I have a friend and she's been helping me roadmap a few things in my business.
mhm,
And at first I was like, I think $1 million is a really cool goal and like doing this and doing that. And then she's like, I want you to think bigger. She's like, you're going to live, let's say, until you're 70 or 80. What do you want to accomplish? And then I found myself road mapping to multiple branches and multiple parts of the company and this and that and other businesses because I do already own a few other businesses. And I was like
mhm,
seeing how I can integrate those. And then I got to this point, I'm like, wow, if I actually do all this, I think this could be $100 million brand.
mm,
And it's interesting because just the aspect of writing this stuff down and seeing how, like, for instance, oh, these numbers will get me here. And then these numbers would get me here. And then this would get me here. And then this could do this. And then all of a sudden it's like, you know, this is actually possible.
mhm,
Like it feels possible. And so for me, to answer your question, I would say not only have I understood that from people I've learned from and mentors and some of the greatest coaches in the world, but I've also experienced the feeling of something that doesn't even seem feasible. As you
mhm,
start writing it down, as you start visualizing it, as you start creating a pathway and taking some action,
mhm,
it actually helps shift the feeling. It really does start shifting the way you look at life.
mhm,
Like if you've never thought you could charge, this was actually life changing for me here. When I first became a coach, I was charging $30 a session, $30 for an hour of my time. But that's because that's what I charged as a psychotherapist, or that's what I made, I should say, for my job. And then I started finding out that other coaches are out there charging two, three, 400 an hour. And
mhm,
then I found out Tony Robbins charges $1 million a year. And then I found out that there are other coaches that are charging thousands of dollars per session because they work in corporate or they do this or they do
mm,
that. And my mind had continuously expanded to the possibilities that I can make an exorbitant amount of money through
mhm,
what I'm doing
mhm,
if I believe that one, I provide enough value, and two, if I believe that I am capable of doing it. But
mhm,
number three is there's also something that had to shift, which was my reality.
mhm,
Reality shifted because I found out that there are people that are already doing it. So here's another part for some of you people out there that might be dreamers. Find somebody that is achieving the results you already want and then figure out how they do it and then start
mhm,
modeling your life somewhat after it and then really come up with that roadmap or the ideals that they hold to get to you would like to go that you feel like they're already at or where they're already going. And so there's a lot that can shift in the rewiring of your brain,
mhm,
especially if you have examples. And an example could just be a damn picture. I mean, that's
mhm,
like the lowest level of it, right? But the highest level is like, hey, somebody's already doing what you want, most likely. Find
mhm,
them so that your brain understands this could be reality.
mhm. I also want to mention the power of, like you said, you were writing things down.
Hmm.
And the power of doing it, actually writing pen to paper rather than putting the information on a Word document, because there's something, I can't remember the pathway, but there's an incredible, something, the nervous system, the way it responds to the physical act of cursive writing. And it actually
Mm,
reinforces whatever it is that you're writing down rather than typing it out on a Word document.
yeah, that's correct. It also enhances retention. Like
Mm,
research has shown that if you write something down with pen and paper, Um, and then there's other parts, right? Write it down with pen and paper. You can read it out loud. And then
mm,
the best way to actually learn something is with the intention to teach it to someone else.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
that's also something really interesting, which is kind of why being a coach and a therapist and then reading self-help books is phenomenal because I have the intention to teach it to my clients. So it really increases my ability to learn it.
Mhm. Awesome. So, Vin, where can people get a hold of you? How can they get a hold of you? Where can they find you on social media? Give us some of the links,
Yeah.
how they can work with you, and find out a little bit more about your mission board.
Sure. So you can find me anywhere on the internet. If you just Google my name, it's Vin Infante. That you could find me on my socials as Vin Infante. On Instagram, it's Vin.Infante. TikTok, same thing. YouTube, I think it's Vin Infante. LinkedIn is Vin Infante. I like to just keep my name short. So you guys can
Mhm.
find me like that. My website is www.vincent, that's my full name, vincentinfante.life.
Mhm.
And all of the resources are on there. So you go to the resources tab, you got your mission board, just download that, put in your information, you'll get it. I also do a newsletter that I release on the 1st and the 15th of every
Mhm.
month. It's a personal development newsletter. I have a blog that I do every so often, and that's mostly based on business development.
Mhm.
So the newsletter is more focused on personal, blog is more business. And what else? Oh, and for those of you that are really curious about taking those next steps, if you really want to learn to master your life and unleash your leader within, feel free. I would love to invite you. I have a free call that you could schedule
Mhm.
with me on my website. It's called a strategy session. We'll sit down, we could roadmap some of your barriers, some of your goals, see help you gain clarity. If nothing else, don't worry about wasting my time. And
Mhm.
a lot of people are concerned about that. Don't worry about it. And ultimately, that's for anybody who's really curious about diving deeper. It's simple. Go on my website, fill out the form, schedule a time, and I'll see
Mhm.
you there.
Okay. Well, you have given us so much fantastic information, a lot of things to think about, a lot of things to already start taking some action steps, which I really absolutely love. Do you have one final little pearl of wisdom that you just want to leave with the audience, something they can chew on for a while after they listen to this episode?
Yes, I'm going to reinforce the advice I already gave
Hmm.
you, and end with a quote.
Hmm.
Not my quote. It's by Socrates. Another one that changed my life. So Socrates said, "We are what we repeatedly do.
Hmm.
Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit."
Hmm.
I think that's probably one of the most important things that people don't realize. You
Hmm.
all have greatness within you. You all have the faculties and the capabilities for greatness. There's no one person on this planet that was born without that capability.
Hmm.
The problem is we give away our power so often, and we
Hmm.
live in a state of powerlessness, not realizing that we've had it all along, but we've given it all away. So my
Hmm.
challenge to you is to figure out what your excellence is. Build your habits, build your behaviors, build your actions. Do those things day in and day out and show the world the excellence that you've had within you all this time. My biggest understanding is it's easy to not do the things that'll make us successful. It's also easy to do the things that will make us successful. You just have to consciously choose. And when you step
Hmm.
into that space of conscious creation, you can have anything you want out of this world. The only thing that I will say is a word to caution is be careful what you ask for because you may not always get it in the way you want it, but
Hmm.
trust that you will get it in the way that you need it.
Hmm. Excellent. Thank you so much for being on the show. I have really enjoyed this conversation. You're a lot of fun to talk to, and you are full of fantastic, useful information. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Everybody, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Make sure that you do share this episode with everyone you know. Do connect with Vin. Obviously, he's a great guy, wonderful to talk to. A lot of fantastic information on his website. So I really encourage you to go there, connect with him on social media. And if you need some coaching, and a lot of us can use it, make sure that you send him an email and connect. So and remember, there is a certain amount of greatness in each and every one of us, as well as inner strength and power. All we have to do is let it go and unleash it to the world. And that is the way of the FemiNinja.